ברוכים הבאים לפסטיבל דוק אביב 22. אנחנו שמחים לארח בפסטיבל את אלכס עין אהרונפק, במאית הסרט אסוואנג, זוכה פרס מעבר למסך בפסטיבל דוק אביב השנה. שמי תמי ליברמן, אני מתכבדת לנהל את השיחה הזאת שתימשך חצי שעה, ואני מזמינה אתכם לשיר שאלות לאלכס באזור של ה-Q&A בכל שלב. שימו לב לא להשאיר אותן באזור של הצ'אט, שם אנחנו עלולים לפספס אותן, אלא רק באזור של ה-Q&A. Welcome to the 22nd Doc Aviv Film Festival. We are honored to have with us today Alex Ain Aronpak, the filmmaker of the film Aswang, the winner of the Beyond the Screen Award at the Doc Aviv Festival. My name is Tami Lieberman, and I will be conducting the webinar, which will last about 30 minutes. I invite you to leave your questions in the Q&A section at any time that you wish. Alex, first of all, again, congratulations on winning the award. It's an award directed at films that strive to lead social change, and your film truly deserves it. Aswang bravely, extremely bravely depicts the violent, everyday reality of the war on drugs in the streets of the Philippines. A reality initiated by President Rodrigo Duterte and his anti-drug policy, which has led to killings of thousands of alleged drug users and dealers, as well as the abduction, as well as the arrest of many more. And first of all, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how the film was born, why, how you decided to make it, how you decided to go on the streets and shoot very directly this reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for the award. I'm very happy about it. It started soon after President Duterte was voted. So the killings started, and I was actually in Europe at the time. And I just saw the first photographs of the war against drugs. And these are very, very brutal photographs, you know, very the heads, you know, wrapped in tape and then disposed. And it was just a very, they made death into a very brutal spectacle, you know. And so these photos hit me very hard. I knew one of the photojournalists. He worked in the biggest daily newspaper here. So I went back, I came home, and I asked him if I could join him during the night shifts. And so these night shifts is what we called, became our lives. Like myself and a few other, mostly photojournalists and journalists, we went out every night. Starting, our nights would start like from 10, and then we would go home at sunrise, and then basically just follow this trail of bodies. And so actually the first few year or so, my research and my footage was just very, very bloody. Yeah, that's how it started.
And during those nights, you encountered Juma and Santiago, the main protagonist of the film.
Yeah, Brother June, Santiago, Mr. Santiago was, he's also a photojournalist, but he's also really a missionary. So he does both. He works and lives at the church as a missionary brother. It's called a missionary brother. And he was going around. I met him in December, so maybe 4 months after I started. So he came in and he was going around, sorry, my dog is eating. He was going around trying to talk to people to pinpoint who needs help to get buried, because over here to bury the dead was even so, you know, very expensive, minimum 500 euros or dollars and up, and people can hardly eat. So his church had this mandate that they could help bury the dead because it was the last act of, you know, dignity that they could give. So that's where I met him. And I saw that people really opened up to him because, of course, we are very Catholic here. And whenever there's a man from the church, people get, he's not treated just as a journalist. He's treated as someone they could trust. And I recognized that. and I took advantage of it. And I met Jo Marie as well in the wake of a young boy, another young boy. So there was a young boy, 17 years old. He was killed by the police. And I might have to add that this was the only time in thousands of cases where the police was convicted because there was a CCTV camera of him being dragged. So I was at this wake of this 17-year-old boy, and then I met Jo Marie there. And I just went back again and again because I found him very interesting.
Yeah. I can imagine that you took quite a bit of risks, both spending nights in these streets, and I can imagine there are risks of censorship with the case of making such a film. Could you share any stories about these risks, or were you actually not feeling that you were facing them during these nights? How was it for you? How was the experience for you?
I mostly felt safe during the night. Of course, you always have to take a certain amount of care when you film in Manila, especially at night. But I was always usually with journalists, with other photojournalists. So as a pack, it's much safer and much easier, no? What I find a bit, but yeah, all throughout these years, I knew what I was facing. And so I did take a bit of care with filming in that I never overstepped boundaries, which I knew could be used against me. I tried, also in the editing, I tried to make sure that there would be nothing that could be taken against me, you know, like something about slander or, yeah, anything, because they would use anything, you know, to against you. So the problem now is releasing the film in the Philippines. So that's a bit of a different issue.
How is it an issue?
Because you don't really know what's going to happen. Right now, journalists are being attacked relentlessly. Any critics of the government is, you know, are being attacked. And then nowadays, a few activists have been killed, for instance. Of course, I'm not there yet. I'm not categorized as an activist, but basically anyone that criticizes the government faces certain risks. And so I had to take certain precautions as well, releasing this film.
Like what? If you
that might actually be the scariest part for me, actually, because you get very paranoid. I'm very paranoid for my safety right now. It's not just because we tried to make the film, like I said, very solidly in a sense that, you know, I won't get in trouble legally. It should be very steady, solid legally. But this regime, it's just everyone seems to be fair game. Everyone can be killed in the streets, you know, like what they did with these activists just last month. A 72-year-old man was tortured at home. And this is actually the father of my old classmate. He was a known peasant activist. And he was tortured at home before he was killed. And I could only think about all the people that I filmed in the past few years, actually, because this is exactly what I was, you know, what I was filming. You come to a place and then you hear someone crying, and then you hear a wife or a mother or a child crying for their father, and then you see the body there. And what came to my mind was my friend, actually, whose father was brutally killed. Yeah, it just seems to be that way. It started with targeting people involved in drugs. It started with targeting people of a certain economic status. And now it's moving on to activists. And who knows what's next, you know, who they're going to attack next.
Did you get a chance to share the work in the Philippines?
Yes, we did. In July, we screened the film for 30 hours. It was supposed to premiere back in March, but of course, the pandemic happened. We screened the film in July for 30 hours.
Online, yeah?
Online. And yeah, it was overwhelming because it received almost 500,000 views in that period. The first website where we put it crashed, so we had to put it elsewhere. And it was trending on Twitter all weekend. And this really surprised me because there was nothing very new, in that film, in a sense that there's nothing they didn't know before. Every little information, scene that was there was in the news already before. But what I didn't realize was there's certainly a big difference or big gap in what is reportage and what can be told in a full film. There's so much more. Of course, reportage is what it is. It's a very, we need it. But I was surprised that people were so affected by the film. And that's something I learned, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I do have a question. What were the reactions to the film in the Philippines? So I guess surprise, as you say, is one of them. Did you get any other responses that you wish to mention here?
Yeah, I had a lot of fears. A lot of people. Also, there was a lot of feedback on social media. People were very deeply affected. But I would say that I think this was just what I wanted to do the entire time was really to transmit what I was feeling the entire time that I was filming. There's a very heavy feeling in your stomach. There was always a hole in my stomach. And I always thought that this was the feeling that I wanted to come out. And I think it worked because I believe that was what I wanted people to feel is what they felt. It was generally, in that sense, it was a very positive feedback. People really liked it. Yeah.
I could say that I have a question that is connected directly to this feeling that you feel that you wanted to share through the film. One question here from the audience is, I imagine that making a movie like that might take a toll on the filmmakers due to the hard images. Can you tell us if you had some breaking points during the shooting or the editing? If so, can you tell us about them and how you faced them?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because when people ask me that now, then I can answer straight. But I think it was 2017 February. I was in Berlinale Talents to present this film, and a few of the mentors there told me, maybe you should stop filming at this point because we're not sure how much you can take. You can't speak about this without your voice shaking. And there were certainly moments, there were certainly breaking points for me, mostly involving children. Like there was a boy who was shot. His father was killed as well, and he was shot trying to protect his father. He was an 11-year-old boy, I think, or 12. And in the end, all the adults in this community ran away because they were afraid of being killed. And so this boy and his cousins had to bury his father. And they were all children in the cemetery burying their parents, And this was probably, I also helped this boy eventually because we had to get his leg operated on. And seeing him, I think it was New Year's. And then he was in the hospital. And he was refusing to get treated. And I also was there because I was the one that arranged it. Mm-hmm. And the boy was panicking. He was, extremely traumatized. And then I realized that I am not equipped to deal with trauma, especially with a traumatized kid. I should have maybe learned about it before. And there were many instances like this. But I just kept in my mind, thinking that I had a job. This was a job for me. I had a task. And that was a good way to look at it. That there is a job to be done and I just had to look directly.
At times, I think some filmmakers and photographers have spoken of the fact that the camera can create a bit of detachment from reality? Is this something that you experienced? How did the camera play a part in your filmmaking process? Or
It was,
your
yeah, I'm not so sure if it was possible with, I mean, of course, you know, but the camera for me was a filter. It made it all so much bearable, because I was looking at this box, at this square, and then I was trying to figure out how to, you know, best capture the image in the dark. And there was a lot of technical considerations. And I have to admit that this was probably why I lasted so long, because this camera acted as a filter for me. And then I didn't have to really, you know, think of myself in the situation. I was just thinking as a filmmaker. But I have to say that previewing the material afterwards, that got me really sick. There were really moments where, you know, I just had sometimes to throw up or cry, because that was surprisingly harder. Then you have to confront what you were what you were capturing. Yeah.
I have one more question from the audience. During the film, you approach the family victims, sometimes at their darkest hour. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about their dedication to the process. Has anyone been afraid to speak out in public?
Mm-hmm. Yes, many. In fact, the process was a bit difficult, because I knew that anytime anyone in the film could say no, because we filmed them at the moment of their, you know, these deep despair, and we were there. And of course, that's not always nice. I didn't always, of course, I didn't ask for their permission at that moment. In fact, what we did was we just edited, even without their permission. And then at the very end, then I went back. And then I showed them these clips, or where they are. And then that's when I asked, are you willing? And of course, I knew that some people would say no. And this was why this was also the formal decision on why the film was this way, because I knew that anyone could just say that they don't want to be a part of it because they're afraid. Mm-hmm. Also during the filming, whenever people say that they're afraid, or, you know, they don't want to come out because of possible, you know, people might come back, the perpetrators might come back, so then I don't include it anymore. It was just a decision.
I would like
very difficult.
I can imagine. I would like to ask you about the Aswang Metaphor. Could you tell us a little bit about it? Why you chose it for the film? What it means to you?
Aswang. Aswang is this. So this was actually the first idea that I started with. When I first saw the images, this was what came to mind. Aswang. Aswang is this monster that we have. Every kid is afraid of it. And then I was reading up on it, and then I saw that it was used in, like, there were, you know, we had like times of occupation in the Philippines. So during the American period as well, after the World War II, there were a lot of rebels, you know, Filipino rebels fighting against American occupation. And what they did actually was do this psychological warfare. Because people are deeply superstitious here as well. So they would take a rebel, they would slash his throat, leave his body in the ground. And they would say that the Aswang did it. The Aswang is the monster from our folklore. And people became very afraid. And so, of course, no one went to the mountains anymore. And this image of the body being left behind to sow fear, this was the first thing that came to mind, because I really felt like this spectacle, this making a spectacle of violence, was just to sow fear. It was social control. And that was the guiding point for me, even also through making the film, collecting the images, creating the images. I knew that I had to focus on atmosphere to create this kind of fear, foreboding feeling. And yeah, it was also, of course, a bit hard to keep it up because you don't know how to formally include Aswang until the very end. So that was also something that we were thinking about with the editing. Then we decided, yeah, we can probably include it. We just have to fix the narration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt that it's almost like the film plays a game, sort of game with the viewer when in the beginning we don't exactly know what this metaphor stands for. Is it this this enemy that Duterte decided to put in front of his to push, or is it actually the system itself? And I think that is a very, very clever element in the film. In the end, we can sense that it becomes that the danger is what they wish to make us believe that exists in these streets to an extent. I found that very interesting.
I also actually one thought that I had was I wanted something very Filipino as well. You know, there's not an exact subtitle translation for Aswang in other language. We have our different versions of Aswangs in every culture, no? But I wanted something undeniably Filipino because President Duterte has huge, his popularity rating is very high. He's very popular all over the world with Filipinos. And I wanted something that people would, because most films that in the Philippines that are called Aswang are fictional films, like horror films. And so I wanted something that people who don't think the same way as me would be open to watching first, without preconceived notions of what it is. So if I attribute it to something, yeah. So I think it worked to my advantage in that sense.
So Aswang becomes a hook, like a bait.
Yes, this was also something that I had in mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because you do manage to maintain a style throughout the film, which is something between magic realism to horror to, I think that one of the elements that are very clear is how you portray the city. The city itself, the streets are portrayed in a very dystopian manner, like these kind of concrete labyrinth that you get lost in. And I wonder why did you decide to emphasize the city's presence in this way? What is the city to you within the world of this film?
2 points. Yeah, one was this was really a feeling that I had while filming. The city is so different at night. These little labyrinths, as you say, these little dark alleys, they become very different during the day. But at night, you see nothing, and then the light flashes, and then suddenly there's a body. And I wanted to take advantage of this, the possibilities that this atmosphere could give me visually. And then the second point is that for me, it wasn't possible to follow just one protagonist in the film. I thought that, this is why I didn't so much delve into the priest's character or just the boy, because I knew that it had to have, multiple characters to really tell this story. Also because it's a story of how, there's mass murder happening. And so it was hard to thread these characters together. And early on, one of the editors suggested to me actually that you should really use the city as well, make it alive, make it a character. And in that sense, making the city alive also meant a formal relief to the very difficult scenes. This is really something that we thought about, because it was very hard to transfer, one heavy scene to another, and to be able to have these scenes of the city would have been a very welcome breathing point for the viewers. Yeah.
I have one more question posted here. It seems that it was important for you to finish the film with some optimistic note, with the kid and the mother reunited. Did you have other thoughts about different endings, maybe more pessimistic? Was it difficult for you to make this decision?
I have actually, this was the most optimistic that I could go. And then it's funny because some Filipinos are also saying, it ended it's in such a pessimistic manner. But formally, I knew that the film was finished or could be finished when I found out that the mother had gotten out. And then I knew that there was some sort of a narrative already, an arc.
After how long of shooting? Sorry for disturbing, but
she was two years in prison. So when I heard that she had gotten out, then I thought maybe I can also start wrapping it up, and then everything else came into place. I'm not so sure if it's very optimistic. Actually, what's optimistic would have been to put the protest scene towards the very end, and then have the secret prison scene towards the middle. But I switched it. I put the secret prison scene towards the end because I thought that we didn't deserve any sort of catharsis yet. Our story isn't over. We have not gotten rid of this president that we have. And so, we don't deserve this catharsis. And so we still need to fight. And that was why it may not be, I wouldn't say it's optimistic. I would really just say it's something like a call to action towards the end. As much as I could, I would be willing to put it that way. Yeah.
Are you still in touch with the family?
Oh, yes. All of them regularly. Yeah, it was a bit difficult at this time because, of course, Manila is still locked down. And the COVID rates are very high.
You're a little bit cut off in the last sentence, if you don't mind repeating it.
Yeah, I'm still in touch with everyone that came out in the film. During the screenings, actually, here we had problems, right, with the screening, and so there was an option to pay. It was a very little amount, so people donated instead, and it was nice because we could help all the people that were there. It's a very difficult time right now. Also, for me, it's hard to go to the protagonists because of COVID, but yeah, they're okay. Everyone's fine. Drummer's gotten much bigger now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish them all the best, I have to say. And I as you said, with this, I wish that this story will get its ending. I will finish with the question, which is perhaps not an easy one, but there is a sentence in the film uttered by one of the people about Duterte, and he says, "I am for Duterte, but what they did to my brother was wrong." And this kind of mentality, I think, is shared by many cultures, by many people in many cultures. And do you see any change in the society, any potential ending from your personal perspective and point of view?
What I noticed was, and I noticed this the entire time while filming, people never really care until it happens to them. And not caring is just the slights. Some people really, support killings or this drug war until it happens to them. I think the problem here is that people don't really look at their community. People do not care about their community. They only care about what's inside the four walls of their homes. And yeah, I noticed this several times, mothers, crying, like overseas Filipino workers working abroad and then coming home to their dead sons and saying, "But I supported this president." And we always just, my colleagues and I we're always just thinking, people should understand this, that it could happen to anyone. I'm not seeing so much change. In fact, there's right now a Facebook argument on the page of the film, because the one guy was saying, "But he is doing good things." But is he really doing good things, or are you just being fooled by disinformation on social media, for instance? Because statistically, there's not really, none of his projects are coming true, for instance. Yeah, I think disinformation coupled with this kind of murderous thinking, it's just a recipe for something very bad. And I hope we get out of it very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing your film with us and for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you, everyone who have been watching us and sharing their questions. And I wish you and your film and the characters in the film and the Philippines itself all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.